that, yeah. Just saying.
But I sent you a spot.
And who's upset about it?
Okay, okay.
You were so bad. I actually not really, that wasn't that pushy.
The determination in your voice, though, once it's pushing farther.
Very demanding. We were talking about sunk costs at the end of class on Wednesday. And yesterday you guys skipped class in the library, which I hope was successful. I know you were all disappointed you didn't have it. Heartbroken.
I was kind of tempted to look up this stuff on Adam Smith.
You could have. I would have been impressed. You came in and spit the facts out.
Impressed enough to
Extra
give
credit.
special credit.
You'll have to do it and find out. Nope.
I would never sleep in your class.
So just. I know, I took attendance for ballet, it's like, that seems weird. I think you just wanted a day off. It's okay, I like days off too. I did not put in a full work week this week. Okay, so we talked about the Super Bowl, and then we started talking about the sunk cost, which is a cost that's already been paid and cannot be recovered. So we started looking at the questions of, or the scenarios where you bought a ticket to a play for $75. The ticket's non-refundable and must be used on Tuesday night, which is the only night the play will be performed. On Monday, a friend calls and invites you to a local comedy club to see a comedian you both like who is appearing only on Tuesday night. Your friend offers to pay the cost of going to the club. Okay, so that's scenario one, where you've already bought the ticket to the play, and now your friend calls and offers to get you into the club for free, but if you go to the club for free, you're not able to go to the play because it's on the same night. In the second scenario, it's Monday night, and you're about to buy a ticket to the Tuesday night performance of the same play in situation one. So you haven't bought the ticket yet. As you are leaving to buy the ticket, your friend calls and invites you to go to the comedy club. Would your decision to go to the comedy club be different in situation one than in number two? Holly?
I think you would be affected by how much you either like the play or the comedy club and how much each ticket costs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts?
More data.
Yeah, actually, just
No, no.
was the, with the first situation, they don't really give you like the time when the play or the comedy club things are
It's
going
assumed
on,
that you
so-
can't go to both, like it's not like one
Um,
and then the other.
Yeah, I think I'd go more for the option of going with my friend since he's paying for the second scenario. since
And then
he's
just
paying
kind
for
of
it and
ignore the
I don't
$75
yeah.
you paid.
Well, that's why I said like it just depends on how much each ticket costs.
Well,
Like-
so if you're going to the play, you're paying $75. If you're going to the club, your friend is paying
But how much is that comedy club?
free for you.
No, like in the second situation. Because you're
Same.
about to buy it. What?
It's, I think it's assumed that your friend's gonna buy no matter whether you pay for this play or not.
So when in the first situation, you would have some cost of $75 if you chose to go to the comedy club?
Or scenario.
I was gonna say, like, either way, like, for the first situation, you'd have an opportunity cost of $75, because either you already paid for it and you're going to it, or, like, you decide to forego that $75 to go to the club. But then, like, this one, you would also have an opportunity cost of $75, right? Because either you're going to pay for it, or you're gonna decide not to, and so you, like, gain $75 by going to the club for free.
Okay, well, here's what they say. Most people would say that in situation one, they would go to the play because otherwise they would lose $75 that they've paid for the ticket. In fact, though, the $75 is lost no matter what you do because you've already bought that ticket, it's non-refundable. So even if you do go to the play, you've lost that $75. If you don't go to the play and go to the comedy club, you've lost that $75, right? So the only real issue for you to decide is whether you prefer to go to see the play or if you prefer to go to the comedy club. So if you would prefer to go to the club, the fact that you've already paid $75 for the ticket for the play is irrelevant, because it's already spent, right? And then your decision should be the same for both situations.
I don't agree.
Wait,
I don't agree, that doesn't make any sense.
I'm
How
confused
is that
because
relevant?
how it, like, if you don't know how much the comedy club ticket costs and they don't explain it to you, then how do you know which one you're most likely to pay for in situation 2?
Well,
Because
your
you're
friend's
not
gonna
gonna
pay
pay.
for it, either way, you don't have to pay to go to the club.
Yeah.
In both situations, the friend's paying for your ticket.
Oh, I thought you would need to pay for the ticket in the second situation. Okay, I misunderstood that.
Sydney, do you have something to say?
Yeah.
Okay. Here.
I'm a little confused because cause in paying for the $75, you're getting a service out of it.
So I don't feel like it's
So I don't feel like you're losing $75 if it's a good play. I mean, if the play's crap, then it's like, okay, well, that
Yeah.
was
Okay,
fine.
I guess the main idea here is that you no longer have that $75. Whether you're getting something out of it or not, you can't recover that $75.
Okay, so
Okay,
if
that
I'm
makes
thinking
sense.
that helps, and then I had a question for, like, if you prefer to go to the club, the fact that you already paid $75 so the ticket is irrelevant, how is that irrelevant if you've actually paid, because like, it's lost now, so like.
You've already lost it, so, I mean, if you wanna go to that play, if you prefer the play, then go to the play, but the $75 is gone.
But in the second situation, you still have $75, because you're not going to the play,
Right,
if you chose to go to the comedy club.
yes. So,
Would it be the same decision?
tricky. So if you prefer to go to the club, so this is assuming that you've paid for the ticket. So if you prefer to go to the club, it doesn't matter whether you pay the $75 or not. And then in the second situation, it should be the same, where you're not really deciding based on that sunk cost. So you'd still, like, you'd have that $75 technically, but it is that opportunity cost of, like, which would you rather go, okay? Let me see. This one might make a little more sense. So there are some psychologists, Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky, and they explored the tendency of consumers to not ignore the sunk cost by asking 2 samples of people the following 2 questions. So the first group was asked to imagine that you have decided to go see a play and have paid the admission price of $10 per ticket. As you enter the theater, you discover you lost the ticket. The seat was not marked and the ticket cannot be recovered. Would you pay $10 for another ticket? So in this situation, you've bought the ticket, you go to the theater, it's only $10, you get there, realize you don't have the ticket, oh shoot, which being at the box office for plays, it happens all the time. Like, sorry. So, would you buy another ticket?
Yeah, I would.
Okay.
It's more rare, so.
I mean, you're already
How much
there,
are
so
you
this is
like?
gonna make sense.
And
$10
$10 is really cheap
Yeah, it's
for
only
a play,
$10.
so
I went through the trouble of actually.
If the play is
doing
$10,
And you spend the gas money how drive there.
Okay,
what
well,
is the quality of the play?
so 46% of people said yes in this study, and then 54% said no. Then the psychologist asked a second group of people the following question. Imagine you have decided to go see a play where admission is $10 per ticket. As you enter the theater, you discover that you have lost your $10 bill. So now instead of losing an actual ticket, you've lost $10 bill, okay? Would you still pay $10 for a ticket to the play?
Do you have another $10?
Do you have another $10?
It's assumed, yeah.
Then wouldn't that be the same situation?
Yeah.
It's the same situation, but the way people are asked, just the way people think about things, 88% of people said yes, and 12% of people said no.
I would end up saying, I think a lot of people say no there because I would feel like I have less money for some reason.
But
I
it's
don't
still
know.
$10.
I know. That's really weird.
Of course,
I
in
feel like either
situation
way,
one,
yeah.
you kind of feel
If
like
you
you're
choose-
taking somebody else's seat.
What was that?
Like in situation 1, at least for like plays like that I've been in and stuff, it's if you lose a ticket, then it's just done because that's other seats that other people could have. So you technically just bought 2 seats for one person. It's not really fair,
Yeah,
and it's kind of
stretch out.
not proper etiquette for theater, but I mean, So I might not actually considering that,
But what if the show wasn't even close to being sold out?
oh, well, then I'd pay it. Doesn't matter.
It's $10 though, so maybe it was close to sold out.
For real, that's really cheap.
I don't know. I don't go to plays often. It's actually the first time I saw the Nutcracker was last year when you guys performed. First ballet. Okay, so the situations presented in the two questions are actually the same and should have received the same fraction of yes and no responses. Many people, though, have trouble seeing that in question 1, when deciding whether to see the play, they should ignore the $10 already paid for a ticket because it's a sunk cost. So it's just comparing, like, yes, you lost a ticket, like you bought that ticket, and so that ticket is like important, but you shouldn't take that into consideration because you've lost that $10. Just like with the dollar bill, if you lost that $10, you're not taking that into consideration if you're deciding to buy a ticket, right? So people have the tendency to not ignore the sunk cost when maybe they should be.
But then you're paying 20 when you lose and paying 10 originally. So why would you not take that into consideration?
Because the 10 is gone, whether you spend another 10 or you don't spend another 10. Okay. Karen?
I think that the way they put this out is pretty complicated, but it's actually pretty simple when you get right down to it.
Essentially, I mean, it kind of takes some brain cells to think through it, which is Friday, so I understand, a little sluggish. Let's see. So, Hubbard and O'Brien are saying that once you have paid money and can't get it back, you should ignore the money in any later decisions you make because it's gone. So just don't even pay attention to that $10 you've lost. It's just not there. So when it comes to decision making, consumers usually make the following 3 mistakes when making a decision. And the first is that they take into account monetary costs, but ignore non-monetary opportunity costs. So we talked about that yesterday with the lottery, how by selling the ticket or not selling the ticket, etc. The second mistake they make is they fail to ignore sunk costs. That money's gone, just don't even think about it. And then 3, they are overly optimistic about their future behavior. So with this one, I think Hubbard and O'Brien gave the example of people saving for retirement. Like, I'm not saving for retirement right now. I don't have an extra penny to my name at the end of each pay period. So I'm not, but eventually, I mean, I hope to retire someday. Where my money's going to come from, I don't know. Maybe marry a rich guy or something. But maybe in the future I'll have like $1 billion on my own. Who knows? But we're overly optimistic about the future, like our future behavior. So I guess where I'm at currently, I'm hoping in the future I'll be able to start putting money aside for retirement. But that may or may not happen, right? So that's a mistake you can make when making a decision, is that you're overly optimistic about your future. Okay. And then there's a section of economics called behavioral economics, and it's the study of situations in which people make choices that do not appear to be economically rational. Okay. So those of you who like psychology and you kind of like economics. All right. Why don't students study more? Government statistics show that students who do well in college earn at least $10,000 more per year than students who fail to graduate or graduate with low grades. So, over the course of a career, which they're assuming is 40 years or more, students who do well in college will have earned upwards of $400,000 more than students who have failed to graduate or who receive low grades. Think about that for a second as you're getting ready to go to college. What?
No, I'm just laughing.
Okay. Most colleges advise that students study at least 2 hours outside of class for every hour they spend in class, and this is true. Like when I went to a fancy college, like during orientation, they're like, you need to spend at least, and I think they said 3 hours per 1 hour of class, which if you're taking 12 to 15 credit hours, right? And I went to school in Florida, so like study, nice weather, study, beach. I actually studied. I was still pale white when I came home. My family makes fun of me. Like, I would come home at Christmas, and the people who got nice and tan up north were still like fading tan, and like I would compare, and I'd be paler still. So they're like, "Don't you live in Florida?" Yes. I live inside my books. That's right.
Knowledge is power.
Okay, so if the opportunity cost of not studying is so high, so they're assuming the opportunity cost of not studying is that $400,000 more over your career that you'd be making, why do many students choose to study relatively little? Some students have work or family commitments that limit the amount of time they can study, but many other students study less than they would if they were more realistic about their future behavior. Okay? So again, just that future behavior and decision making. On any given night, a student has to choose between studying and other activities like watching television, going to the movies, or going to a party. Bless you. That may seem to provide higher utility in the short run, right? Because you need a study break. Go out to a movie with your friends, but now you lost those 3 hours you're supposed to study for one of your classes, right? So many students choose one of these activities over studying because they expect to study tomorrow or the next day. Sound familiar?
Procrastination.
Bingo. But tomorrow they face the same choices and make similar decisions. So that short run decision of going to see a movie today, well tomorrow there's a football game, the next day there's a ice cream social, the next day. So there's something always coming up, and you're expecting that you're going to be able to study tomorrow, right? So why do today what you can do tomorrow? But over time that can really affect you. So if instead you would have chose to study during those hours, you would have been on the right track to making that $400,000 more in your career. Does that make sense? A little more? Yeah, okay. So, as a result, they do not study enough to meet their long-run goal of graduating with high grades. If they were more realistic about their future behavior, they would not make the mistake of overvaluing the utility from activities like watching television or partying, because they would realize that those activities can endanger their long-run goal of graduating with honors. Okay, so think about that as you get ready to go to college, right? I've already been there and done that, but how many of you guys plan on going to college? Pretty much everyone. So when you're in college and your friends invite you to go to a party, you're going to go to the party, you're going to study.
Easier said than done.
Party's easier, so
I mean, if it's all academics and like no breaks, you're gonna go crazy. So maybe just have a schedule or a plan, one day per week of just kind of not doing things.
Or at least if you're gonna go party, don't stay there all night. So.
It's true. My little sister and I went to a party this past weekend, and we got home at like 2 in the morning. But it was fun. We dressed up as partners in crime. So I always, whenever I introduced her, I was like, yeah, that's my little sister. She's pretty much my partner in crime. So if we get into trouble, we're usually together.
Same way for my brother and I.
Alright, so what else do we have? So some vocab you should probably write down. Total cost. It's the cost of all the inputs a firm uses in production. And then I think we just switched back to your textbook with this. Nope, just kidding, we're still on Hubbard and O'Brien. So, total cost is the cost of all inputs a firm uses in production. So, in the short run, some inputs are fixed and others are variable. I don't think we've talked about those yet, have we? Oh. next, okay. So the cost of fixed inputs are fixed costs and the cost of variable inputs are variable costs. So variable cost is a cost that changes as output changes, so you can think of how the cost of labor would increase or decrease depending on how much you're producing. The same with raw material costs. If you're buying in bulk, you usually get a discount, but if you're only buying what you need to fill orders for maybe like that day or that week, you may be paying more. And then also the cost of electricity and other utilities. Erin, do you have a question?
Kinda, so this is all like from the point of view of like the firm rather than the
Yeah.
point of view of the consumer.
Right, so this week and then next, we're gonna be talking about different organizations and firms, so we're coming from the point of view of the companies instead of the consumer.
Okay.
So each company, like, whenever we wrote out that, budget, or not budget, but, the wool sweater company, where we had like what they made in a year, but then we had to deduct all of their expenses. This is along the same thing, so we're now looking at the costs, like all of those expenses that have been incurred. So, the total cost is the cost of all the inputs a firm uses in production. And then that would consist of both the variable cost and the fixed cost. And then a variable cost is costs that change as output changes, and they would include the cost of labor, raw materials, as well as electricity and other utilities. So you have, sometimes like utilities are called an overhead cost, where you're paying that whether you're producing anything or not. Like you've rented that building or you've purchased that building and it costs money to maintain it, so that's just like an overhead or a fixed cost. It doesn't matter if you're only producing 3 wool sweaters or 300, you're still paying the same amount for the building rent, right? Why is that a variable thing? Oh, I guess with electricity, that one is kind of dependent on how much you use it. So if you're using all of the lights in your building or warehouse, they're constantly on, you'd be paying more than if you turn them off at night when you're not there. So that one could be variable cost. Same with like water or other utilities. Fixed costs are going to be the costs that remain constant as output changes. So that would be like those overhead costs that I just mentioned. So lease payments for the factory or retail space, payments for fire insurance, also payments for like newspaper, television, advertisements. Those are costs that it doesn't matter how much you're producing, you're still paying the same amount. So at the bottom you have that equation where the total cost is equal to the variable cost plus fixed costs. Or if you want to write it, not write it all out, you have TC equals VC plus FC. Okay. Did you all get a chance to write those down? So some more vocab. Normal profit is the average return of supplying ability. It is a part of the firm's opportunity cost, and that's because it is a cost of foregone alternative, which would be running another firm. I think this is when I switch back over to your textbook. I'm trying to incorporate Hubbard and O'Brien a little more, just because I feel like you can relate a little more to like the examples and the way they put things than your textbook. Is that agreed? Okay. So I'll upload the presentation tonight if I remember. So if you're walking by the front desk today, you can just kind of be like, hey, did you upload that yet? And be like, no, I'm going to do it now. That way you have this information that I've pulled from Hubbard. It's not going to be in your textbook. your book, it's saying a firm's owner often supplies entrepreneurial ability, the resource that organizes the business, makes the business decisions, innovates and bears the risk of running the business. And then the return to the entrepreneurship is profit, and the average return for supplying entrepreneurial ability is called normal profit. So if normal profit in the textile business is $50,000 a year, this amount must be added to Sydney's cost to determine his opportunity cost. And that was that wool sweater example. And then economic profit is the total revenue minus your opportunity costs. So the bottom line would be a firm's economic profit. And then page 199, they have economic accounting, where they put the opportunity costs of wool, utilities, wages paid, and bank interest paid. And then total explicit costs, which were Sydney's wages foregone, Sydney's interest foregone, economic depreciation, and
Is normal profit before or after, like, you put in all, like, you subtract all your, like, total costs?
You can see it listed as part of the cost on table 10.1. Do you have your book?
Kind of.
Okay, so page 199. Hey, it's here. I haven't seen it yet today. I'll still be here in a minute. So normal profit is included in total explicit costs. Or sorry, implicit costs. It's an implicit cost, yeah. So they put the opportunity costs, they've included under total explicit costs, and then the wages foregone, interest foregone, economic depreciation, and normal profit are included in total implicit costs. You see that table 10.1.
How is normal profit a cost, though?
I think they're looking at it as an opportunity cost here.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, because you would think profit cost, like why is that? But it's an opportunity cost is how they're featuring it. So when you take the total explicit cost and then the total implicit cost, you get $365,000. And your economic profit is $35,000. So if you haven't read chapter 10, read it. Also review the presentation, you didn't get all of your notes. Goodman, we'd like to see you in class next week, so